Hi, it's Jessi. Today I am drinking pomegranate raspberry tea from Stash. This is a green tea with pomegranate, raspberry, and some chamomile notes in it. So today I'm here to review the Liveship Traders series trilogy from Robin Hobb. This is the second series in her Realm of the Elderling collection. So it's Ship of Magic, followed by Madship, followed by Ship of Destiny. The whole series is Liveship Traders. I have these editions because I think they're really pretty. I know I have different editions for Farseer Trilogy, and I think I'm gonna like alternate with those. But anyway, and yeah, let me start before I even get into the review or even talking about the book by saying this has been, by apologizing for my partner, this has been a review I've been putting off for a little bit. I finished this book several days ago. It took me a few days to even put my Ship of Destiny review up on Storygraph because it was tough. And it's complicated. The series has some complicated things with it. There's some stuff I really did not like. But overall, I enjoyed the series. So I'm going to talk about those things. I'm going to do this review a little differently. I'm going to do my typical categories thing, but after the ending, before I get in my wrap up, I am going to talk about some of the things that bugged me in particular, just because I don't know where else to fit it in here. It might go in the plot, but not really. So I'm going to wait till the end to talk about those things. And I'm gonna give trigger warnings up front for sexual assault and rape because that is very present in these books. So I do want to give that trigger warning up front. And I left my laptop over there, so I'm gonna go grab that and come back, and then we will jump into what this review is actually. All right, so starting as always with a description of the books. So the Liveship Traders trilogy is the second in Robin Hobb's Realm of the Elderling series, which is a series of series about this world that she has created. And yeah, anyway, it's about a fantasy world. And every other series follows Farseer and the Fool. Every other series does that, and then the other series follow different parts of the world. So Liveship Traders takes place around Bingtown and the surrounding oceans, and it is about these traders. So Bingtown is a trading city, and they are dealing with some very complicated politics surrounding their, I guess they're like kind of like a colony of Jamalia. I don't really know what to call that relationship, but recently things have been changing in Bingtown, and people aren't necessarily happy with those changes. And in particular, it surrounds the Vestrit family. And the Vestrit family are traders that own a live ship. And live ships are a boat made of a special wood called wizard wood. And after 3 generations die on the ship ship awakens and comes to life. And these are ships that are really special for a lot of reasons. They make for good trade, partially because the citizens of Bingtown, and in particular the live ship traders, are the only ones that can trade with the Rainwild citizens, which live up a river from Bingtown, but also that live ships tend to be faster. They tend to be a little more agile because they have this like living entity steering them. So like I said, it primarily follows the Vestrit families, which are Ronica, which is the grandmother, and then her daughters Kefria and Althea, and then Kefria's children, Wintros, Malta, and Selden. Primarily, and then of course Kefria's husband Kyle, who we all hate. But there's also another plot dealing with these pirates that live not too far away and out in the ocean, and Kenneth, who wants to become king of the Pirate Isles. And then later we get in some we get introduced to a few more characters, but primarily it's about the Vestrit family. And that summary was it's It's one of those things, sometimes with fantasy, I find that when I'm trying to summarize the plot of a fantasy series, I end up actually summarizing like the world, because that's just somehow easier to do. But like I said, in the beginning of Ship of Magic, there's some changes happening in Bingtown that not everybody is a fan of. And we start off following specifically Althea because her father has just died and things didn't go the way she expected. And so it's her trying to like reclaim her place in her family. I guess for a plot, that's kind of what I can give you. So going from that into my rating system, and again, there was some stuff I'm going to mention towards the end after I've gone through my rating system, because I think it's important to highlight them, because my rating system is my rating for this came out very overwhelmingly positive, but there is a specific element I did not like that I do want to talk about. But starting with the characters. Look, Robin Hobb is a wonderful character worker. I gave the characters in this 10 out of 10. One of the things that I think worked for me better in Liveship Traders than it did in Farseer is that Farseer is all from Fitz's point of view. Liveship Traders, we have many point of views, and I love having a lot of point of views because I think characters can become so much more deep when we're seeing them both from the outside and the inside. So one of the problems in Farseer, and I would try not to talk too much about Farseer, but generally if you're like here, you probably have read Farseer and you're wondering if you should go bother with this trilogy. One of the things with Farseer is that because it's all from Fitz's point of view, all of the characters kind of end up, I don't want to say they end up simpler, but they kind of do, where we're seeing it how Fitz sees them, which isn't necessarily bad, and I think it's actually some brilliant writing that like the way Burrich and Regal and Molly appear to Fitz is how we get them. Here we get that, but we also get how they are perceived to other people. The two best examples of that is definitely Kenneth, who is, I don't want to call him the villain, and I feel like he's almost, and if you've read these series, please bear with me through this, almost an anti-hero. He's very much doing the right thing for the wrong reasons most of the time. And he's so fascinating because the way he's perceived by everybody outside of him is like, wow, what a hero, he's doing this. And then we get his perspective and we realize that's not what he is. Another really, really great character who gets expanded mostly through Madship, but then also into Ship of Destiny, is Malta Vestrit, who has one of the best, if not the best character arcs I've ever seen. I have never, ever in my life, ever wanted to hit a 12-year-old more. Malta is the worst at the beginning of Madship. Or maybe even in Ship of Destiny. I'm trying to remember how big of a role she has in Ship of Destiny, but she's the worst. And I hate her, and then she changes, and it's really, really well done. So Robin Hobb has amazing character work and just such great character arcs in here, so 10 out of 10 for the characters. Going from there onto the plot. So the plot I ended up giving 9 out of 10. I'm trying to figure out exactly where this is because I was looking at my other ones. Ship of Destiny, I gave 9 out of 10 to the plot. Madship, I gave 7 out of 10 to the plot. And then Ship of Magic, I gave 8 out of 10. So like I gave it 9 because thinking back on it from the entire experience, I think it was good. I think my issue with particularly Madship, it slowed down a lot. It took a lot of time for things to happen. It was very middle book typical stuff. But I think it was one of those cases where even though this book really, 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 really slowed down, the payoff in Ship of Destiny was really good, so it was worth sticking with it. Madship is also where some of my issues that I'm going to talk about later come in, which carried through into Ship of Destiny, but not as not as much. But it's one of those cases. Ship of Magic does that thing that I hate in fantasy, hate in first books in fantasy series, where it has a million characters and none of their plots are together, and you're like, I don't really get it. I don't understand the point of this. Why is this character and this character and this character all getting point of views when there's nothing relating them? Except Ship of Magic very, very, very quickly makes it obvious how they're connected. And even if you don't necessarily see these characters and the different point of views interact right away, you can see how they're connected to each other, right? Like, it's not hard to see how a trader family and a pirate might end up interacting, you know? So that would be one of the things with the plot is that like in the first book, it takes a little while for everybody to collide. And then even after that, there's a lot of separate storylines happening, and there's a lot of like, how are these gonna come together? But they do, which I'll talk about later. But like, Hobb manages to pull all these different threads together in a way that was really nice. So there is some of that going through the entire series where you're like, how does this connect to this? And like, you can see how they could be connected. Like, this is how they're related because it's, you know, mother and daughter, or, you know, that kind of thing, but they're not necessarily directly interacting. But you also see the indirect relations that like this thing happened with this character here, and now way later there's this event happening with this character. And so the plot's really well done, and again, slows down a little in the middle, but we expect that from a trilogy. Going on then, my setting. The setting is 10 out of 10. This is some fantastic world building going on. Most of it is Bingtown and the Rain Wilds. And then of course the Pirate Isles in that area, and it's just, everything is built in a way that makes sense. And I wish I could talk more spoilers about things that like end up happening that like expand this world and then explain things in the world, and it retroactively makes the world of Farseer even richer, because like you're learning things in this that like influence that, or were influenced by that, but also there's just a lot of moments in the world evolving, and it's all about change. And so I can't get upset with a world that is showing me the realistic elements of change. Like, how would trade be different if we had ships that were alive? And how would this affect piracy differently? And what would be the impact to normal traders that can't do these things? And what if suddenly the live ship thing gets disrupted for some reason or another? And what are the implications of yada, 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 yada? One thing this book does also deal with, and I did not trigger warn this at the beginning, it deals with slavery in a really interesting way that I haven't seen a lot of fantasy handle. Not just that, like, there is, like, actual slavery in here, slavery of people, which is very, very, very overtly condemned, which we love. But also there is magical slavery in here, where if you think of something like a genie, is that a form of slavery because it's working against its will, even though it's magically bound by this and yada, yada, yada. So it's kind of like that kind of slavery is also addressed in here, which is something I have not really seen addressed in fantasy. And I really like that that was explored, that like humans enslaving humans we accept as wrong, but why don't we accept humans enslaving intelligent fantastical creatures as something wrong? So that's explored in here, and that was really interesting. I guess like fits in world building because it's themes. So going on to the general appeal for me, I ended up with a 9 out of 10 here, and again, I'm gonna save some of this for the end, but it would be a 10 out of 10 if it weren't for like one thing. And I could get into it here. No, I'm gonna wait till the end because I want to put it at the end, so if people want to skip it and don't want to hear about it, they can. But yeah, so 9 out of 10 for general appeal. Writing style, 9 out of 10. It's not perfect. Robin Hobb does have some quirks sometimes that are like, I don't know about that, but for the most part, Robin Hobb had just gorgeous writing. It is so, I mean, I probably said the same thing in my Farseer Trilogy review, and if you haven't, I'll link that up there if I haven't already. But she has elegant prose where it's beautiful but not flowery, and it's really gorgeous and evocative language, but it's never over the top. It's not purple prose. It's telling you just what you need to know, and it's really magical, the way she writes. And there's some lines in here that just kind of like, oh, got it. That was a bit of a sucker punch. So writing style, definitely 9 out of 10. It's not perfect, but 9 out of 10. Originality here I gave a 9 out of 10, and I'm struggling with why that was. Originality I'm finding more and more as I read. It's hard for me to define what counts as original because like it's really easy to say something is not. Like, wow, this is literally just Star Wars with dragons in it. That's easy enough to say. Or, wow, you could have put some sort of twist on all these tropes you were using, right? Like, that's pretty easy to say, but when something is original, it's kind of hard. So like that 7, 8, 9, 10 range is kind of harder to define, I think. I think I gave this 9 out of 10 just because this is not the only thing I've ever heard of with like living ships. And, you know, some of the elements that are in here are things that are reminiscent, but like in the way that like fantasy borrows from other fantasy a lot. So I giving it 9 out of 10, but not because I think it's unoriginal, simply because like everything borrows a little bit from everything else. It's also an older fantasy series, so it's like, is it really fair to say you're unoriginal if things are borrowing? Anyway, you get the point. Originality, it's a weird one. All right, and then finally my last category here is the ending. So skip ahead if you don't want to hear anything. This won't be any hard facts, just expectations, so you can go ahead, skip ahead if you are not interested in hearing my thoughts on the ending. Ultimately, I gave the ending an 8 out of 10. It's a fantastic ending. I think Robin Hobb does a really wonderful job of pulling all these threads together. My problems with this were twofold. And again, problems is kind of a saying a lot. I don't really have any problems. I enjoyed the ending, but the reason it's 8 instead of 10, I guess, is one, it was really weirdly happy. I had like spent the entire last book bracing myself for all of the tragic things that were going to happen at the end of this, partially because Farseer sets you up for that, because Farseer is not really the end of a series because Fitz's story goes on, you know? So Farseer ends at kind of a dark, well, not super dark, a sort of dark place. So I was totally expecting that here, and it's weirdly happy. Not perfect. I mean, there's definitely like, people are still dealing with trauma and stuff, but like weirdly happy. So like that to me was like, I think that's my expectation versus what I got, but like it felt weird. It felt too good. So that would be one thing. And the other thing is I do think there was a little bit of a contrivance to get everybody in the same area. I mean, it made sense in the books and it definitely pulled it together, but most of the plot points come together in a way that makes sense, except then there's like a couple little ones that are like not there, and it's like, wait, this plot line and this plot line you're just gonna leave dangling because you couldn't figure out how to get them at this climax spot. So that would be my other issue. But like those are very, very minor issues. Overall, I do think Ship of Destiny was a fantastic conclusion to this trilogy, and honestly, it's kind of amazing she pulled it off in the way that she did. Also, I love these books. They're like the perfect size to hold in my hand. I know that's not really important right now, but like beautiful. Anyway, so before I get into my final thoughts, let me talk briefly about the one element that bugged me a lot. This book the series relies very heavily on women being under the threat of sexual violence. It gets the worst. It doesn't really happen so much in Ship of Magic that I remembered. I don't remember being upset by it. It was really in Mad Ship that it started getting really bad. That every single female woman perspective in Mad Ship at one point was threatened with sexual assault. That either it was, I need to, you know, I don't want to get into details because I don't want this to be spoiler filled. I don't want spoilers, but literally every single one of the female characters in this at one point or another is under threat of sexual assault. And it's just really frustrating because why? I get that some of it is built into the world, and I really understand in particular Cyrilla's plotline. I kind of understand where it's happening there, but it was just very, very, very frustrating, especially in Mad Ship, because it was literally, I mean, heck, even some of the male point of views, like, I'm trying to think if there is a single perspective in this entire book that does not involve sexual assault at one point or another. Whether in the backstory or threat of it in the current times or the like, and I'm thinking no. So that's rough. And it was really hard to get through, and it's definitely why Mad Ship of all three of these books was the lowest rating for me. Like, I brought the plot point down quite a bit because of that, because every story involved the threat of sexual assault. This somehow got, like, it's less present, but the moments that it's brought up in Ship of Destiny are worse. So it's less present, right? We don't deal with it. It's not an omnipresent threat in Ship of Destiny, but the times when it comes up, I think, are worse. One, full-on trigger warning, we do get rape in the book. Like, there is a rape scene that is, like, written from the perspective of the person being raped, and we get the afterthoughts of the rapist. So that's something to be aware of. But it was also kind of this weird thing where it kept being emphasized that rape is bad for women. And I think it was unclear whether this was meant to be taken as like, this is true, or this is like the character thinking something wrong. Like the one line that I sent was something like along the lines of like, it's the most awful thing females can experience, as if it's not also equally awful for a man to experience rape. Yeah, anyway, so that is something that I think really bugged me throughout this. Again, ultimately, I'm still struggling myself with how I feel about sexual assault in books in general, because I do think it's a reality that there's no reason to intentionally shy away from it, but then why overuse it? And I think in particular with the series, the reason it bothered me was because it was used so much, because then it became like, I don't want to say gimmicky, but it just felt like it didn't need to be that much. So that's that. The other thing, and I will mention this just briefly because I don't want to talk about it too much, is that there is a character that felt a little queer-coded to me. And I won't get into it too much because I don't want to get into spoilers, but it's a character that dresses flamboyantly, and he thinks about how another male character is very beautiful, and it's a weird kind of thing, and I definitely don't think it was intentional, and based on other queer rep Robin Hobb has in her series, I don't know that I would, but it is something to be aware of. Anyway, that is that. So that's my review of the Liveship Traders trilogy by Robin Hobb. This is them. I will have linked in the description, I didn't mention this earlier, but a review of the tea I was drinking. I don't know why I didn't mention that. Comment down below what you think of Liveship Traders or the Realm of the Elderlings so far, if you've been reading them. Are there any other seafaring fantasies you think I should try out? Because this is not something, a specific subset of fantasy I've read a lot of, and I kind of liked it. I liked the pirates. I think maybe pirate fantasy is something I could get into. If you have any recommendations for that, like this video if you liked it. Be sure to subscribe if you're interested in seeing more from me or Ben, or checking out our podcast if you want to hear our Wheel of Time thoughts, okay? Love y'all. Thank you for watching. Bye. I forgot to say, but overall Liveship Traders as a trilogy came out to a 9.35 out of 10 or 4.68 out of 5. So forgot to add that, so tacking this on at the end. Bye.